Hello, my name's Michael Flower, and today we're going to look at Dremio and its role in the data lakehouse. We'll also take a look at Dremio in the world of real-time data analytics. I'll have a live demo, and we'll look at aspects of data sourcing, discovery, governance, manipulation of the data, and also the subsequent effects on reports which are reliant on that manipulated data. Firstly, we'll start by looking in the Dremio UI, where I've got some data sets and data sources already defined here. I've got quite a lot of spaces defined already, and in an earlier discovery, we actually built a report and some data sets, and I'm going to use that data set again to start from. Okay, so what I'm going to do is by searching in using the search bar in the top left here, we're going to look for a data set which I've tagged with a labeled Dremio demo. So that makes it very easy for me to discover a data set that we've been using before. It makes it easy for collaboration as well. So let me use this data set called customer, which is actually in my common space. So if you look down here, it's in that space there. And I could discover it that way as well. But we can actually do it by just searching for the tag. Um, so what I'll do now is if I'll have a look at this data, we'll see that we've actually got about 1,850 rows in this data set. Okay, so we can have a look at that data immediately. This is a virtual data set. Okay, so it means it's kind of a view based on data from elsewhere. So we can see where the data actually derives from by clicking on this lineage button in the bottom right here. By clicking on lineage, we'll see that our customer data set is actually based on an iceberg data set that's on S3. So we can read to the left there and we can see where that data really resides from. And so what that means is that if we were to, for instance, manipulate data in our iceberg table, it would automatically be viewed in our customer view here as well. In addition, we've also got a child-dependent data set on our VDS, which is called address info, which is in a separate space called data science. And so let's take a look at that one as well. So we can actually examine it by querying this data set from the screen I'm in right now. And if I look at the address info, we'll see that actually we can see a similar data set, looks similar to before. It's got all that customer information in that we've had before. But if I scroll to the right now, we'll see it's a much wider data set and it includes things like street name, number. So basically for each customer, it's showing me their address and it also show me the state that that customer resides in as well. Okay, so we're going to now look at a report that I've already created based on those two data sets, the customer data set and the address info data set. And if I'll open up Power BI now, here's a report that we've already generated. And in the top left here, we've got basically a data set that's just looking at our customer data set there. It's really breaking down the salutation of each customer. So we've got quite a lot of doctors in our data set. We've got a few sirs as well. In the bottom left, I've also broken down using the address information. I've been able to work out for all my customers, for 1,850 customers I've got, which is listed in the bottom on the top left here, is which customers are in which state. So you notice I've got quite a lot of customers in Texas. And over on the right-hand side, we're kind of combining all of that data into the customer breakdown by state, but within each state, what are their salutations? So we see in Texas, for instance, we've got quite a lot of ones which are uncategorized, but we've also got quite a lot of doctors in Texas, seems to be quite popular, and a few sirs as well. Okay, we've got quite a few people who are being knighted for some reason in Texas as well. Okay, and we're going to come back to this report as well. Let me just go back to my data set, my customer address, my address info again. And just to be clear here, we can actually as well look at the lineage from this data set's perspective as well. And we can see that our address info is actually based on not only our original customer data, but it's actually based on joining to another data set to get their address information. In fact, that's held on SQL Server as well there. Okay, so we can see the data in quite a lot of ways. If you want to see the SQL that drives it, we can actually look at the join condition as well in here. So there's a lot of things we can actually start to explore in this data and just want to preview the data as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually also access the data. I'm going to actually access the raw data, that S3 bucket, where my data resides. And to do that, I'm actually going to use another tool. I'm just going to use DB Visualizer, which is just a JDBC connection through to that same cluster. And I'm just going to run a select statement here, which is just going to select my data from that bucket. Okay, so select from S3 iceberg customer. And what that will then do is run directly against my S3 bucket. I'm running here against as a user who's got privilege to access the S3 bucket directly. So it's connecting to Dremio still, and we're fetching back. You notice it's still in the bottom right here. We've still got the same 1850 rows as before. And we've got that same data as before as well. And you see in here, we've got things like the other information here as well, such as the salutation is also mentioned on in this column here. So we can see all that data. So what we're now going to do is we're going to manipulate the data set. I'm actually going to insert into this table some other records. So I've got a data set. I'm just going to use a standard insert statement, but I'm making the point here that you could manipulate the data without connecting to the UI, right? You can connect via other tools and manipulate the same data. So I'm just going to insert into my S3 bucket some data that's from another data set. It's a series of customers who are all being given the title Sir. So basically, I'm going to skew my data a little bit by adding in a lot more people who are Knights of the Realm. Okay, and what we'll then see is that, because keep in mind here, as soon as we add data to our S3 bucket, then any dependent virtual data sets downstream will automatically see this new data as well. So now I've entered my 400 rows. If I go back to my Power BI report now and I simply refresh my report, what that will do is it'll refresh all those three panes, and we should see our data being transferred automatically. So now we notice we've got 2,250 data rows in our data set, and we've got a lot more people who are called Sir in there, 726 in there as well. So we can now see that there are more rows, and we've got lots more Sirs before, and that's immediate. Okay, we haven't had to tell Dremio to go and check refresh the metadata or anything. Because we're all running against the iceberg catalog here, we can see that data straight away. So let's look at other ways of loading in some data. I've shown an insert statement there. We could also load it in using a copy command in Dremio. So I've got some other data that's in CSV form and some more data that's in JSON format. So I'm just going to run both of these copy commands one after the other, and I'm going to copy data into my S3 bucket again, into my iceberg table, using these copy commands by just saying from and the location of that data in my S3 bucket. So it'll then be able to load that data in. So it doesn't have to be the same format. We can also handle things like Parquet data. We could load Parquet data into our iceberg data set straight away. So that'll take a few seconds to load that data in. But again, as soon as this data has been landed, I'll immediately be able to refresh my report and see these new data as well. So let's have a look at the effects. Okay, so I've added my new rows in, 350 there. So it's about another 600 odd rows have been added in. So let's refresh my report again, and we'll see that then we should see the row count immediately increase to a value more than 2,250 anyway. So yeah, 2,900 rows in there now. And we see that actually we've added in some more salutations. So we've actually got now, you've noticed we've got some with a period after the, and some without. So maybe I need to tidy up this data a little bit as well. Maybe we want to tidy up these categories a bit. So what we could do now is we could decide, well, let's say that but let's address the ones which are blank or null for a start here. And we're going to address those by saying, well, basically, I'm going to take the guess that anybody who's blank or null is really, I'm going to assign the privilege as being another Sir. So let's run an update statement. So I'm going to run this update statement against my S3 bucket, and I'm going to basically say anybody who's blank or salutation is null, I'm going to assign a salutation of Sir. And that should skew it a little bit more. So we won't see more rows being added now. We'll simply see a manipulation, and we should see more in that category of Sir. Okay, so we've updated those records. And if we now refresh our data again now, we'll see that we had 855 before who were called Sir. We should see a few more come in now as well. Okay, so we've now got 918 Sirs. Okay, quite a lot. Let's update those other pieces as well. Just update the final piece there to do some more data cleansing. I'm going to update the ones who don't have a full stop at the end, Ms., Mrs., or Miss, and I'm going to add kind of concatenate them and add a period on the end of those as well. So that'll tidy up all of these other categories here, where we've got a Ms. without a full stop and Ms. with a full stop in there as well. So we'll just tidy those up as well. So we can tidy up the categories as well. And so you can see here the report is quite a nice way of pointing out that we need to do a little bit of data cleansing as well. Okay, so this will take a few seconds to run. And once it's completed, we can then run our refresh again. And we could see our new data straight away. So we should see now we've got fewer categories being assigned. And there we go. So we've now got in our Texas state there, we've now got we've still got 5 or 6 categories in there, but we can see that we've broken them down into quite a nice group. All right, so let's go back to our Dremio UI again, and we're looking here at our we want to look again at our common customer one. So let's go back into my spaces and do a Dremio demo. Let's have a look for that data set again and look at our customer data set. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take another look at this data set. And maybe I've got some other users who want to use that customer data, but to build their own report against. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to join this data to some demographic data that I've also got. So I'm going to use the join mechanism now. Just by clicking on the join button. I could write the code myself if I wish, and I can actually join to a data set here called customer demographics. And if I apply that join, we'll see that actually we can then start to see data similar to where we were looking at the address information for the customer before. We're now seeing the demographic information for these customers as well. So if I scroll across now, we'll see that all the demographic information. So we've got things like gender, marital status, and so on. So it could be quite sensitive data, this one. So maybe what I want to do now is I want to publish this data set, and I'm going to save it into a different space. Maybe I'll save it into my into a space which is probably a little bit, maybe a bit more secure, that maybe not everybody can see this data. So if I save this view, what I can then do is I can publish it somewhere else. So let's publish it into a space where I can put the data. Let's put it into restricted. I'm going to call it cust demog. Customer demographics. Let's read it with an underscore in there. Okay, so cust demog. I'm going to save that away. And what I've now got is a data set that's probably maybe a little bit more secure. So it's in a restricted area. And I can see that data again now. So you can see my data is basically being pulled through. And what I could then do is I could build another report based on this demographic data as well. So let me just quickly launch Power BI. And Power BI will launch here in the context of this particular data set. So what it'll give me straight away here will be a data set which is going to be showing me all the columns that are available to build my report against. And like all the queries, all the reports I've been running, you realize we've been running direct mode. So that means if there are any changes to the original data, Dremio will be receiving a query from Power BI and it will be running that straight away. And so if I now look at my data, and it'll show me a sample of the data here, I'm not actually loading the data into Power BI for now. It's just showing me an example of the data set. And we could now build up a report quite quickly here. So let me build a report that's just going to basically just look at the row counts or something, and we'll start from there. So if I just click on here, let's have a look at the columns that are in this data set. Maybe take the customer ID and I'll put that into the y-axis here. I'm going to do a count of the customer IDs. And it'll basically just show me how many rows there are. And also so this is another live query that's run. So there's our 2000 whatever rows in there for now. And let's just break it down for now by gender. And we'll just say, okay, divide it in. It should be probably just 2 columns of male and female. We may have unknowns as well. Let's see. So what I've now done is I've basically built a report against my data very quickly by just counting up. So there are only 2 categories, F and M, we've got in this case. Okay, so we've now got a brand new report that's been created. And bear in mind now that even if I was then to add more data into my original S3 customer data set, this report would also be showing that new data as well. So just to prove that again now, if we go back to our main screen and look at the lineage for our customer demographic data set, we realize it's again based on our common customer data set, but joining to some customer demographics also on S3 as well. Okay, so what we've done there is in this demonstration, we've seen how we can discover curated data sets. We can examine the lineage of those data sets and governance of those data sets as well. We've also seen the power of Apache Iceberg, which provides a data manipulation capabilities on data stored within your data lake. We've seen the benefits of Dremio's virtual semantic layer to provide data freshness. And when we manipulate the data in our Iceberg tables, we see that any dependent data sets downstream will immediately see the new data. In the next session, we'll look more at the wider capabilities of Patchy Iceberg and Dremio's cataloging capabilities too. We'll see how we can do things like time travel on our data sets. We can provide data branching for transaction isolation, and we'll look at things like how we can roll back changes to an earlier state as well. Thank you very much.